props for you guys supporting this, and I want to see a hand from everybody who traveled from outside the state of Florida today. Yeah, that's what I like to see. So got a couple of fun sessions today. Well, at least I think they're fun. I hope you think they're fun. The trivia might be torture for some people, but it'll be fun for me. First, I'm going to do just a little session that I started calling Jensplaining, which I think anyone who listens to my podcast, I do a lot of Jensplaining. We're going to have Dan Lauletta from Equalizer Soccer. He's going to review the 4 previous NWSL finals. We've got some highlight videos. Then we're going to have trivia, and instead of me and Dan facing off like we did last year, it's going to be participatory for you guys. I'm not going to force anybody to play the trivia. We can do teams, you can do individual, but I do hope that you will participate because I try to make it fun. And then we have Jordan Angeli, former NWSL player, former WPS player, also doing NWSL broadcast now. She's going to be here around noon, do a little Q&A, and she will sign autographs and you can take pictures with her. So if you need to get up and go to the bathroom, that's fine. If you need to go get food or drink, that's fine. Just try to be as quiet as you can since we're kind of in one room. Feel free to ask questions. Totally open to that. I'm sure Dan is open to that. And if we finish a little early, obviously me, Dan, other people will be hanging around to talk. All right? And hopefully we won't have any technology issues now that we got it all figured out. All right, lights. Give me lights. There we go.
Are you going to do any Game of Thrones Jensplaining?
Would you like a Game of Thrones session? No,
Not really.
Not going to do it. All right, I thought of a couple topics that I find that people ask me about a lot when it comes to not just women's soccer, but soccer. And I think we're starting to see some of these issues come into play more as we're having some of these international players come into the league and more people are paying attention. And we're in the middle of we're at the end of a qualifying cycle for the men and about to go into a qualifying cycle for the women. So my first topic is cap tide. I think everyone's heard that phrase last month in the discussions about Sofia Huerta. So, I've dropped that phrase a lot and people have said, cap tide? What's cap tide? So let's talk about what I mean, or what anyone means when they say cap tide. So we've got 2 players in the NWSL. We have Sofia Huerta and Katie Johnson. What do they have in common? They both played for Mexico. And what? They're American citizens, and they both played for the Mexican national team. All right, one of these players was able to make a switch to the U.S. One cannot. All right, so the difference here is Katie Johnson is now cap tied to Mexico. Sofia Huerta was not. All right, so I'll back up a little bit. You are not tied permanently to a national team's program until you have played what FIFA considers a competitive match. And that means World Cup qualifier, World Cup match, Olympic qualifier, Olympic match, a Euro if you're from a European country, that kind of match. Doesn't matter if you play a youth national team games, even a youth World Cup, that does not tie you to your national team. But once you have played an Olympic qualifier, which Katie Johnson has done for Mexico, she cannot switch to any federation. It does not matter that she is an American citizen. She cannot make that switch. Now, Sofia Huerta, she played with Mexico in the U20s, in the U20 World Cup. She actually played some senior friendlies with Mexico, even against the US. But because she purposely did not play with them in World Cup qualifying in 2014, she was invited to that camp and to be on that team. She deliberately declined because she wanted to keep her options open and someday play for the U.S. national team. So 3 years later, she got that first cap. Now there is a paperwork process that goes through. You do have to get approval from FIFA. It's not an automatic. And obviously you have to have some kind of connection to that country. She had the choice to commit to Mexico or commit to U.S. And so Sofia Huerta was able to make the switch to U.S. Katie Johnson, having played in the Olympic qualifying for Mexico, will not be able to make that switch.
So I know the U.S. Federation is heavily involved in the switch.
They have to. It's part of the paperwork requirement.
Is the Mexican Federation then basically they can't do anything about it, or they can't, like, what can, just on that end, if they're out
If
of
a
luck?
player doesn't want to play for you, you know, now if it was Katie Johnson trying to make that switch, FIFA would be like, sorry, we're not even going to consider that. And the reason FIFA does this now, they changed these rules about 15 years ago. It's kind of funny. It's really because of the Brazilians. Because there's so many great Brazilian soccer players, and so many that couldn't even make their national team, is you had a lot of Brazilians naturalizing into European countries and joining their national team. So they're like, there was a Brazilian on the Polish national team in like the 2006 World Cup and stuff like that. And so FIFA was worried that you would end up having a World Cup where the 4 semifinalists were 4 countries full of Brazilian national team players. So they're basically like you can only switch to a country if you have a legitimate natural connection to that. Not so much related to cap tide, but to those national team rules. Nadia Nadim, FIFA actually made her an exception because usually they require a 5-year residency for someone who is becoming a citizen, and she could not apply for Danish citizenship until she was 18, which means she would have had to wait till she was 23 to play for the Danish national team. But they allowed her an exception to that, given on her circumstances of having to leave Afghanistan as a refugee. All right, similar to Sofia Huerta and Katie Johnson, Chiamo Bogogu could, she's got 3 different national teams that she could play for if she chose to, that she'd have to pick one. But so obviously she's played for the US in the under-20s. She was a member of the 2012 team that won that under-20 Women's World Cup. But that does not commit her to the US. So she is British born to, or I guess London born, Kieran, London born? London born, to Nigerian parents. And I guess she's an American citizen now. So she could have an argument for England, for Nigeria, or the US. I'm not thinking she's interested in Nigeria, and I'm sure England wouldn't want her unless she was playing over there full time. But just as an example, that she's got 3 different countries that she could choose from, and she is not cap tied to anybody, even though she has played for the U20s. All right, any questions related to that?
When you say played for, do you mean roster or like stepped on the field?
Stepped on the field, yeah. So that's a good question. Bianca Henninger, she has not played a competitive match for Mexico yet, but she's already made the paperwork switch. You're allowed a one-time federation switch. So technically she's in that, no man's land of she's made the paperwork switch, but she still hasn't been technically cap tied. Yeah.
So what is the like citizenship requirement? Because would she have to become a Nigerian citizen if she wanted to play for Nigeria?
They would have to do some paperwork related to that,
right.
Showing that she had a grandparent, or actually parents that were actually Nigerian citizens, right. And yeah, there would be some paperwork to do with it. It's not my grandfather was from Nigeria, so I can apply for this.
But you have to be a citizen of the country.
I think that comes down to the individual country itself. FIFA's more looking at that it's like, do you have a legitimate connection to this country? Yeah. Right. And keep in mind, Sydney Leroux, she played her very first U20 Women's World Cup with Canada. Obviously did not cap tie her to Canada. All right. So another topic that I like to complain about, and I apologize in advance to any Orlando fans I might offend with this discussion. And I also apologize to any Abby Wambach fans who I might offend with this.
She starts with fraud.
Well, no. Okay. Read the first sentence. This is the first sentence of her book, and as soon as this book came out, I downloaded it, I started reading this, and I'm like, she needs a new copy editor. I don't blame Abby for this, I blame her copy editor. What is wrong with that sentence?
Professional goals.
Yeah.
And international.
Yeah. She has not scored more professional goals than anybody else. I think it's Romario from Brazil who has like 998 or something insane like that. She scored more international goals than anybody else.
Yeah.
Okay, international meaning representing your country. Has nothing to do whether or not you were paid for it, because some of her first goals were before she went pro. So it's not professional, it's international. But in those counts, they are not counting U20 World Cup, U17, anything that was a scrimmage or not a full international. Now hers are 184, but she did play for the U21s and the Nordic Cup. None of those goals are in there. All right, that's her senior international goal count. And I was really disappointed. This kind of crushed my worldview when I learned this from FIFA, that they do not track international goals. They leave that up to the federations. They track only World Cup goals and Olympic goals, basically the tournaments that they run. So there is absolutely no totally official, like, one arbiter of like, this is how many people have, but maybe I can apply for that job sometime. So Marta, does she have 100 international goals per the official definition of international goals or not?
No.
No.
That's you wouldn't have brought it up.
No. But first let me point out this photo. This is from the Pan Am Games in 2007. So Marta and the full Brazilian national team are playing the U20 US women's national team, which is why all the goals she scored in that game do not count towards her total. Yes, she scored those goals for Brazil, but they would not count towards her international total. So can you recognize a couple of the U20s in that picture?
Are they cute?
Yeah, so we've got Lauren Holiday, number 8, and Kelly O'Hara, 17. Not really sure about 6 and 12, maybe Dan. It kind of looks like it's so blonde.
Yeah.
She got taller.
She's not that
Yeah,
tall.
she's
short.
short.
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
not
that's
that
what I
tall.
thought.
She's not taller than O'Hara.
So what's funny is there was a tweet a couple years ago from Women's Soccer United saying, Marta scores her 100th goal for Brazil. And that's the only documentation I've been able to find anywhere that she had hit 100. And what it was, once I finally did some digging and put it together, that was her 100th goal with her wearing a Brazil jersey. But that included her goals against the U20, that included goals where Brazil was playing a club instead of a national team, which again, would. So yes, only me, I think at this point, has gone back and checked. So she's got 93 full international goals and like 104, something like that for Brazil. And this was a challenge we were having as we were prepping for the broadcast at the beginning of the season. Jen Hildreth, who cares so much about making sure everything's right, she's like, can you tell me exactly how many goals Marta has? Because Orlando is telling me she has over 100. And I said, well, she does and she doesn't. You know, so I was like, so if you don't want to have to explain that on air, because obviously during an NWSL broadcast that's way too long to talk about, you can just say she's, you know, scored more than 100 goals for Brazil, or has scored more than anybody else for Brazil, or, you know, however you want to phrase it. But and I think that's why they probably just go with 5-time World Player of the Year, or I prefer the all-time World Cup goal scoring leader. You know, something like that. Yeah.
Jen, what year was that picture again?
2007.
I'm gonna cheat and look up these players up.
Thank you.
It looks like
Well, and it's hard too when it's projected. It kind of makes it blurry.
makes her look taller. It's Nikki Marshall, I think. Number 6.
Kylie Wright was 12.
Okay.
And 6, Nikki Marshall.
So this was a point of contention for a while. April Heinrichs. If I had different U.S. soccer media guides over the year, and it's like, wait, does she have 35? Does she have 37? I finally was able to figure out a few years ago after talking with U.S. Soccer. Originally it was 37, but FIFA at one point decided that one of the U.S. matches against Canada did not count as a full international because either how long they played or, you know, for reasons lost to history. But yeah, so she has 35 internationals. Well, they actually played 2 games in one day. And I think FIFA was saying it's like that second game, obviously you were doing different subbing or, you know, something like that. So she's got 35. But she did, when I met her 3 years ago, she's like, yeah, they took goals away from me. And that was like, how do you, but that's how. All right, so that's my Jensplaining for today. You can always get more from listening to the podcast, or as many of you know, emailing me and asking me a question that then forces me to stop what I'm doing and write an essay answer because I can't help myself. All right, so I'd like to introduce Dan Lauletta, who's going to take us through the previous NWSL finals. We're going to start with 2013, and this obviously should be 2016. For those of you who might feel any pain by watching these, I want to give you the order. We're going to go 2013, 2014, 15, 16. So if you need to leave or close your eyes or plug your ears, you got that. All right, Dan, it's all you, and I'll be your.
Any damn seconds.
Obviously, I'm Dan Lauletta. I write for Equalizer Soccer. And took Jen and I an hour to decide we were going to go 13, 14, 15, 16. But one thing to note is that Jen said I didn't speak long enough last year. So if I start to ramble too much, or if it gets boring, just let me know and I'll move on.
But you can shoot up your hand and ask questions.
Especially, we can do general questions after, but like game-to-game questions will be good. First of all, a little unofficial market research. For those who've traveled from out of town, especially those who are not Portland or North Carolina fans, would you have come had the game been, had you not known the site of the game until last week?
No.
No. Okay. All right, so 2013, was anybody at this game?
That was in Western New York.
Nowhere. Definitely in the middle of nowhere. So 2013 was an interesting year. It was only 4 years ago, but it actually was a long time ago when you factor in all the history of women's soccer, because we just had WPS end in 2011 under not the most ideal circumstances. And most people thought at that point that there wasn't going to be a league again for a long time. But in 2012, some people stepped up to the plate and then US Soccer got involved. And they came up with the idea of subsidizing the players, and then we had a league in 2013. So I think back then, we had the WUSA was 3 years and out, WPS was 3 years and out, so I don't know that anybody really knew what to expect. And whereas if anybody was around for WUSA, their first final, there was a party about eight times the size of this room, both the night before the game and the night after the game. Like, it was a big, big event. This event was not big. As you said, Western New York, not the easiest place to get to for a lot of people. The league literally did nothing. Like, you got there was a practice, I guess the day before the game, you could go to the flash practice. The Thorns, of course, wouldn't let us stay for their practice. And they searched the whole stadium to make sure we weren't hiding out, which we were, and they booted us out. But literally that was it. Like, the trophy wasn't on display, there was nothing. There was, you were not there, right? There was nothing like this to be had. So at the same time, though, for a very short time, and hopefully people remember this as we move along. Are there any aggrieved former Flash fans here, by the way?
I was from Rochester. I was season before I was in front row for that game, so
Okay.
I was at that time.
Excellent. What? Oh, yeah. You want me to talk? Hopefully, as we move on, that we remember that there was an era where Rochester was, I don't know if you want to call it the home of soccer, but there were a lot of really big games played in Rochester. In 2011, after the World Cup, Magic Jack came there with Abby Wambach and Megan Rapinoe. Obviously, Abby was from there. Rapinoe had served her the ball in the Brazil game, and the place was overflowing with people. I know Jeff was there. And then they had the final there a little bit later, and that was not quite sold out, but pretty close to sold out. And it felt like that league had arrived, only they were in all kinds of legal trouble with their rogue owner, and they went out. And then in 2012, they had the WPSL league final there, and then another one in 2013. So there were actually a lot of really big women's soccer games played in Rochester over the course of a few short years. So this one, you had the Flash and the Thorns. Now, the Thorns that year were kind of a little bit of a mess during the season. I don't know if the Thorns fans would agree with me on that or disagree, but it didn't seem like they ever really clicked. But they had enough talent. They got in the playoffs, and they were behind 2-0 in the semifinal. They wound up winning in extra time. And the Flash, as they had done in 2010, 11, and 12 before that, were right at the top in the final. So the thing about this game, this was an extremely chippy game for the first hour or so. Probably the most intense hour of a women's pro soccer final of the 10 that there have been. So you can roll the first one. This is a play that might be a little bit forgotten. Actually, before you play, anybody remember who scored the goals in this game?
Only for the Forest
What was he at?
Sinking folks.
Right, okay, you guys got that down. All right, this isn't one of the goals, but, or is it? Is this the goal?
Yeah.
All right, here's comes. Now, the interesting thing about this goal is that Tobin Heath was actually injured this week and didn't train. And the injury was to her right foot. And she actually used her right foot to score that goal, which is, I'm sure, her best goal that she's ever scored, and maybe her most important goal that she's ever scored. So the day before the game, we were all at training, and then kicked the media out. They had Tobin sitting on the bench for a while, and we were actually trying to figure out if she had trained after we left, if they were trying to keep that from us. But it didn't look like she did, but she had enough in her to score that. Alex Morgan was also injured coming into this game. I'll get to that in a minute. Do you have the next one?
Yeah. That's the balance.
Okay. 2014 Kansas City won, by the way.
I can watch Cooking score again.
Is this?
There.
Oh, so there's a yellow card on Cat Williamson.
Did she
All right, where's that name?
I would have loved to hear that.
Yes. Just nice.
You want to talk about this one first?
Yeah, so was anybody at WoSoCo last year?
Oh, come on, that was soft.
And we showed the play where Abby wins the penalty, where Nancy Augustiniak got red carded against Abby. Same exact pose, right? So here we go again, 2 yellow cards, but obviously that's not enough for Abby, even though they were both, in my opinion, a little bit soft. So this was 56, 57 minutes, something like that. So Williamson gets sent off. Morgan was actually on the sideline at that time getting ready to come in, and they pulled Morgan back and put in Tina Ellerson to go back. Morgan wound up coming in a little bit later. But the interesting thing about this is that we all thought this would open up the game for the Flash, and that they were tied up, and it actually wound up having the opposite effect. The game kind of lost its momentum after this point, and the Flash still had a lot of the possession, but they never really looked like they would score a goal after that, and then eventually Sinclair got one in stoppage time. And that's where the river section was, where Christensen went to celebrate. And that was that. And obviously the Flash opened.
Wide open, not even close enough.
Yeah, obviously the Flash were sending numbers forward there, so. You want to run the other one, or is it not necessary?
Okay, here's the.
All right, so here was the example from earlier about how chippy the game was. This is Tobin, that's Amy Barczyk. Somehow that was not a card, even though that should have. To me, that's a red card easily. So there's like 3 different cardable offenses on
Yeah.
the same play.
Yeah. Trifecta.
So that is, we can watch that again if we want. Actually,
Do you wanna go back to it?
no, it doesn't matter, but I spoke to Franch yesterday about that goal, and she actually volunteered that she ran into the post, so I didn't have to ask her about it. Over these goals. So she remembered it with very clear detail, but she still had a pretty good sense of humor about it. One other current thorn was on that Flash team. I'm sure everybody knows that answer.
Catherine Reynolds.
Yes, Cat Reynolds is correct. So, anyone want to ask or comment about the 2013 final?
In the first picture, Sam Kerr was actually sitting in the back.
I was wondering if that was.
Oh yeah,
on the side
Sam,
or in the back
Sam
corner.
Kerr was on that Flash team.
What was the attendance?
Attendance was 9,100 something, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, they had actually had, I think, their last 4 games, 2 regular season, and then the semi and the final were actually maybe their 4 highest games or 4 of their last 5, and I'm not sure what happened after that, because even last year, they never really, they did a little better last year, but they never recovered. Never got anywhere close to that number.
And they had the
Yeah.
slightest of edge to host that game because, so that's still where the highest remaining seed hosts. Teams 1, 2, and 3 in the final standings all had 38 points. So it came down to tiebreakers to see who was 1, 2, and 3 seeds.
Right, and Kansas City was actually about to win the Shield, and Jen Hoy scored, I think, make it a tie with the Red Stars, and that gave Western New York the Shield. And if Sky Blue had won their last game, all 4 teams would have had the same number of points, but they had a draw, so they finished 2 points behind. Anything else about 2013? All right. All right, 2014. From a league perspective, this was the low end for championship matches. This was in Seattle. The Ring got bumped out of their home venue for a music festival. So they played at Starfire, which is not terrible because they trained there. They might have still been scarred because their record there was pretty poor in 2013. I don't know that any media traveled in for the game besides myself, Jeff Kassouf, and Graham Hayes. They trained, is anybody here from Seattle? They trained at Seattle Pacific, about like a half hour north of the city. It was raining, so literally there were like, it was me, Jeff, Graham Hayes from ESPN, and there was a Japanese TV team there, to talk to Naho. And we were literally standing under rainy bleachers talking to Megan Rapinoe and Naho and a couple of other people. So there was, again, the league did pretty much nothing for this game. You know, we got there, they grudgingly gave us access to practice, which again was like 30 minutes outside the city. There were actually a lot of people that covered the game on game day, but not too many people who were in there the day before. So the Rain, who were not that good in 2013, they totally redid their team for 2014. They brought in Kim Little, who was the big one. That made Jess Fishlock a lot more, made Fishlock a lot better. Keelan Winters also, but then Kendall Fletcher got brought in, and Kawasumi got brought in, and from game 1 it clicked in, right? You always wonder when coach brings in all these different players, is it going to work? And Laura Harvey kept saying that they need to be difficult to play against as well as good going forward and scoring goals, because they didn't have a shutout in all of 2013. They opened up 2014 with a shutout. They were off and running. They played 16 games in a row without losing. They only lost twice all season. One of them was last game of the season to Portland, where the Thorns needed the game to be in the playoffs and the Rain didn't. So, not that that's an excuse for losing, but a lot of times in that situation, the team that has more to play for is going to be your winning team. And Kansas City had kind of set the standard for, I guess, what you would call beautiful soccer in the opening years. They played very 1-2 touch. They seemed to move in tandem up the field. They had, Lauren Holiday was kind of running the show in the midfield. And the difference in 2014, they were still very easily could have been here in 2013. But in 2014, they got Amy Rodriguez. Amy Rodriguez, as we know, can score goals. But if you follow WPS, and the last WPS game in 2011, the story of that game was that Amy Rodriguez could have scored about 6 goals in extra time and couldn't hit the frame on any of them. And I won't repeat some of the colorful commentary from her coach after that game. But so Amy Rodriguez was here playing for Kansas City in this game, and I have no idea what we came up with for this game, but let's give it a shot.
Oh, it's the foul.
She puts that one in the back of the net, and that's been the difference
I don't know if you could tell or if we could run it again, but right before she gets the ball, someone climbs up her back and she's looking at the referee like, what's going on? And the ball comes right to her feet. And then she just goes and does all that. And the finish was, I think, overlooked here because of how incredible it was what Lauren Holiday did with the ball before that.
Playing so well. I did a few of Barnhart saves. There we go, so let's go back to that again.
Commerce City. Back on March 11, 2009, Bolivia 5. Holiday, great use of the body there.
You can see it better when they go to the other right.
It's too long. What a finish.
Worst trade Laura Harvey's ever made.
Amy Rodriguez, after solo time, from Lauren Holiday.
NWSL U.S. Women's National Team is in the stands watching this today. This will be something she is delighted about because Holiday, look at this skill. Keely Winners, one of the best defenders in this league. She walks by both of them and then has the presence to find Amy Rodriguez in that seam. Barnes on her other shoulder, and Rodriguez once again, given the few looks she's had in this game, making sure she puts that one in the back of the net, and that's been the difference for Kansas City.
Okay, so that made it 2-0. Rapinoe scored late, and then you have the Rapinoe near miss at the end. The two forgotten things about this game, number one, that Barnhart was fantastic in this game. It was also the year that she was on the injury report every week, and you could actually see at the beginning of that clip when she kicked the ball that she like hobbled a little bit, so go ahead.
Williams taking the free kick. Holiday all the way back to take it. Will knock it towards Hagan. FC Kansas City trying to manage this out. It is a Seattle throw. They gotta get it forward here. It's at the point where we will pick up the third minute of stoppage time. Winners. Ball driven forward towards the Guerra. She flicks it out. It's a shooting opportunity. Wow. She came up with the spectacular in the semifinals to provide the game winner.
That wasn't exactly as good a chance as I remember, but she needed to hit it better than that.
Yeah.
Which she, of course, admitted after the game.
FC Kansas City. It is mission accomplished.
So it was weird for me to watch this too because the camera was actually on the other side from where all this. Was anybody at this game? The camera was on the opposite side of where the seats were, which I did not realize until just now, in fact. So that was Kansas City beating Seattle. Laura Harvey, they gave her the runner-up medal, and she immediately took it off and put it in her pocket. We have a pretty good picture that we've run an equalizer sometime where she's just kind of walking away, putting the medal in her pocket. She said there would never be another team quite like this ever again. She was kind of right, but they almost got back and did similar stuff the next year. But any 2014 questions, comments?
Just a couple of Barnhart saves.
Okay. 1 second.
Holding the ball.
Here's Barnhart highlights.
To the top, Little's gonna get there. Little shoots. It's kicked away from Barnhart. It's Little.
This game definitely had the feel that if Seattle tied it up, they were going to win next
He's
time.
taking a deep breath right there.
They were definitely pushing hard. John?
I heard Julie Fowdy at one point mention that Jill Ellis was watching Lauren Holiday at that game. Whatever came of that.
Was she, I don't know, did she ever make it after that?
I heard she won a World Cup, but I don't know what position she was playing.
Everything, give her the ball.
Anything else on 2014?
What was the attendance?
Attendance, I want to say it was in the high fours, but it was a near sellout or a sellout for
It was like
Starfire.
4,300, but
Yeah,
the venue
but-
was sold out, but yeah, and they got pushed out of Memorial because of the concert, so they didn't get to be that. What can Memorial hold? Like 6?
12, I think, 6 on each side.
Starfire holds 5 if they really jam everybody.
Yeah, I think they could have gone more, but it was, I mean, it looked full and the crowd was very, very into this game, I will say. But I will tell you, once you left that stadium, not a soul in Seattle had any idea what was going on. I was in the hotel with FC Kansas City, and the people at the desk had no idea there was a game going on.
How many, in your opinion, traveling supporters, visitors, were there like?
For this game, there was, I don't know, maybe, there was a section of FCKC people there. It wasn't big, they were very vocal. I would say if there was 20, there was a lot, probably less than that. But there were definitely people there.
Because of course you only had 1 week's notice for where it would be.
Right, although, I mean, essentially, they kind of had two, because they knew if they were in the game, it would either be in Kansas City or Seattle, but you still can't book your flight until the week before, which is not ideal. You ready for 2015? What do you know? Kansas City and Seattle. So Seattle got back, they won the Shield again. Kansas City actually struggled early on in 2015, a little bit in 2014 also, I guess, but in 2015 there were times where maybe it looked like it wasn't going to work out for them. After 2 home playoff games, they had to go on the road and play Chicago. Michelle Dalton made a mistake early in that game, and Kansas City won 3-0, which might be the least lopsided 3-0 game I've ever seen, because if you just watched the game and took out the goal, you might think Chicago had won the game, because they probably had better of the play between the 18s in that game, which we all know doesn't really matter. Seattle won the Shield. They beat Washington for the 2nd year in a row in the playoffs. And the thing about this year is this is when things started to change. This is when they put the game in a neutral, or what I like to call predetermined venue, which was Portland. Wasn't handled the best because they didn't announce it until, I don't know, August or something. There was not a lot of time to get people on board to go to this game. They got lucky, I'm sure, that Seattle was in the game, which is an easy drive down to Portland. And the Portland fans did a good job. I think attendance was a little bit over 13 for this game.
For a Thursday night, too.
Thursday night, right, which the date changed about an hour before the US-Germany game in the World Cup. NWSL announced their TV schedule, and they just kind of slipped in under the radar that the final was moving to October 1st from I don't remember when, but it was kind of a weird schedule because there was a FIFA break after the regular season, and then the game was on a Thursday. So I think it was, and Kansas City, if I recall, didn't play the last weekend because we still had the odd number of teams. So I think Kansas City went from like Wednesday midweek to the following, like 2 weeks later Thursday, or maybe 3 weeks later Thursday, whatever it had all the makings of a choppy game. I don't know if I would call it a choppy game, but it was definitely a defensive tussle in this game. But this is when things started to change. This is when Jen started coming to finals, and this is when
I went to 2002 and 2003.
Of course. But this is when we had, like, this is when, like, large groups of people, at least from my perspective, people who covered the game would come into the city. This is when, you know, you would go out, and I don't remember the name of the place in Portland, I apologize, but everybody there was there for the game. And a lot of it were Portland people, but a lot of people came in from out of town because you could plan it out. Just like this game, you could decide, I want to be at the game, and it doesn't matter who's in the game, I'm going to buy my tickets, I'm going to book my flights, and it was a heck of a lot easier to do that. Starting in 2015, they got a little bit more elaborate with how they handled the pregame stuff. They did an open training for the media, even though they didn't tell us, nobody was there. Literally, they told us like a day before, but they did it at the Nike site. I think there was one media person there who was doing this, following Seattle around that season. So Kansas City and Seattle. So this was the big rematch. And as much as everybody thought Seattle would win in 2014, everybody thought Seattle would win the rematch. They had played Kansas City pretty well. In fact, they played them, I remember watching in Canada during the World Cup, and they just completely dominated Kansas City. I'm sure the teams weren't completely full for that match, but as you can see, that's Kansas City again celebrating. So the key moment in this match came 77th minute, I think, when Kendall Fletcher got hurt and had to come out of the game. You have the actual win to play when she gets hurt. Go ahead.
Fletcher. She's trying to recover defensively, but Timbrack has so much speed. She steps in front, so she does her job there, but then she kind of slows down and puts her arms out.
So she had to come out of the game, which was unusual for her. So the last thing any team wants in a game like this is to change up their back line in the 75th minute of a scoreless game. So Heather O'Reilly was on this FC Kansas City team, and she was essentially on the right flank for the entire game. And then lo and behold, Seattle changes their right backs, and look who shows up on the left side for this one and only time of the entire night.
Scored 7 times in these final 15 minutes, giving up 3 goals. They found a way to score late, and Seattle 6 goals, but they have been outscored, interesting, by 1 in the final 15 minutes. This touch by Reed just came into the match. O'Reilly took a point.
So that was Reed. I love the fact that Jen Hildreth, who was calling this game, took note immediately that Reed had just come in the game, because to me that's the important part of that play. She took a bad touch. O'Reilly was over there. O'Reilly denied that she went there intentionally to try to pick on Reed when she had just came in, but that's probably literally Reed's first touch of the game right there. Was that header that she wasn't able to clear very well. We want to see it again, or are we good? All right, I guess we're okay. I don't remember in this game, is this the post? The crossbar?
Yeah, but it's not Pino Fishlock, it's actually Fletcher.
Okay.
Fletcher with the cross.
I'm not sure if that's
No, that's not the one I was looking for, but
there are a lot of close calls like that, and another stellar game from Murray.
yeah, I don't remember in this game that there was any big late push. I'm sure there was to some degree, but I don't remember anything like the Rapinoe chance the season before. So here we have it. Kansas City wins for the second in a row. It was the last game for Stephanie Cox, and it was really kind of the end 2 years only of that system with Laura Harvey, where she had the 4-3-3 and Little was in the middle, and they could counter on a dime. As soon as you would turn the ball over, and if you freeze one of the streams when they turn the ball over, almost every Seattle player is already headed back the other way. They countered brilliantly. Everybody on the field would make a run into the offensive third at some point or another, and they would never get caught. Everyone, they always covered everybody. They had fantastic movement. Merritt Mathias was on the Seattle team. She was actually on the 2014 Kansas City team. People may forget. And despite Merritt's current reputation, Laura Harvey rates her very high as somebody who defends well as a forward. She calls it defending from the front. So Mathias was on this team, but this was really kind of the end of Seattle, because they haven't made, and actually Kansas City also, because this was Holiday's last game, which we knew. Leanne Robinson, who had gotten married and played this game as Leanne Brown, she retired. Amy LaPelbit retired. Amy Rodriguez got pregnant and has only played 1 game for them since. So it really was the end of the line for both teams in terms of what they were doing, organizationally and tactically. And then that takes us to 2016, which is the Flash and the Washington Spirit.
Blow the damn whistle and fast forward.
I'll show you some of my final highlights. As close as this game was, this is not my favorite game, but we were in Houston. This was the first time that everybody knew for the whole year that we were going to be in a predetermined site. So a lot of people made it their business to be in Houston for this game, and it was the Flash, who had really been pretty poor the last couple of years, but they had the 2015 first round. They drafted Dahlkemper, Mewis, Hinkle, and Williams in the first round. Sabrina D'Angelo was also part of that draft. All 5 of them started this game, and they brought in Paul Riley. And if you've read content this week, you'll know that they worship the ground Paul Riley walks on, and they certainly play like that. So what do we have for this game? And the Spirit almost won the Shield.
Yeah,
This is the first goal, right? This is Crystal Dunn's goal.
That was a good one.
Yeah, we were just like, we were like.
Yeah, not D'Angelo, the best moment there.
They have the speedster of their own. Crystal Dunn rolled that line perfectly. And there's a movie over the top. She sees the keeper, D'Angelo.
Dunn actually had a really good battle with Hinkle. I'm not sure where Hinkle was on this particular
That's
play.
always Krieger and Hinkle in the corner.
Hinkle was obviously out of position there, but Dunn and Hinkle had a pretty good battle there in the first half. What else do we have from this one?
Got the equalizer.
All right, so before you play this,
Skip that
Not
one.
play
I've never seen a game where there's 4 minutes of stoppage time for second half extra time. I don't recall anything that made.
Yeah, it was a little longer than 4. Yeah.
Yeah, it was way longer than 4. It was like 70 minutes.
It was 21 seconds longer than it needed to be.
Well, once they, I mean, here we're still inside the 4, so based on the 4, this is still legitimate. But I just don't know where they came up with the 4 minutes. But let's roll this.
That's the only bullets.
I like me was going.
And please don't tell me you wanted to PKs because I was horrid. Not the first 2.
Yeah, it's Weiss shooter.
Pull that short.
Williams with no fear. She could have been punched in the head. A major collision. She gets
I know,
right
that
out
was
of
very
her
good.
finishes.
McDonald would have lost it right there.
Yeah, and right here, you can tell. Yeah, you can.
Oh my God,
Sure.
there were flashes. I don't remember seeing any of them.
So,
Yeah, you're right. At this point, you could tell that the Spirit were gonna lose right then because it was sucked out of them.
They lost their spirit.
I always say, you never know. But
You
the
could
really
just tell.
cruel thing about this was that there were
And they
3
never got
Spirit
one
players, Huster, Matheson, and Krieger, who had been the only originals from 2013 when they were horrible.
And they all
And they were the 3 that had their PK saved by D'Angelo. Do you have the Williams?
I have from Williams PK to the end.
Thank you.
Okay. This is my favorite penalty ever.
Yeah.
This was to win.
No, it wasn't a good PK.
That was me was to win the game, and she missed it.
D-Maps, no. All people. No, that's what we said.
And those were not great. They gave D'Angelo the MVP for making the 3 saves, but those were not good penalty kicks. Still have to save them, but they were not good PKs.
She stopped them. She hardly had.
The unfortunate thing,
Nobody wants to kick it
We're
over.
replaying, sorry, we're replaying.
the unfortunate thing about this is that the Flash never played another game in this form. They still exist in the United Women's Soccer, whatever they call it league now.
Spirit doesn't exist
No,
anymore either.
fans never got to celebrate it with them. Now they're back as the Courage and the Spirit kind of tore themselves apart. And
They did, however, ramp
That's
up their
another
ticket sales
discussion.
after this game.
the
At-
Flash.
in Rochester. They did, my friends all, I'm from Rochester, my friends are still there, and they did sell a lot of season tickets. They sell, I think they sold
They just had to give it all
more
They
back.
moved, yeah.
And then they made the announcement that the team was sold, and then there was people who had a hard time getting
Money
things
back.
back from.
That's disappointing, especially because the team still exists in one form or another.
Yep.
All right, so that's basically the story of 2013 to 16, 2017. Hopefully we'll give us something. Any, do we have time for questions? Any questions, comments, feedback?
What was the attendance from it?
8,200 distributed.
Yeah. See, that's the question we keep having, is you keep seeing and hearing sellout or all this stuff, and you look at the game and there are like so many empty seats.
Tickets.
So it's ticket sales, it's
Yeah,
not, yeah.
distributed.
Yeah, because I mean, if the entire stadium's tickets are sold, it doesn't matter because people don't
Show
they
up,
have no
yeah.
tickets to sell.
Yeah.
So again, show of hands, who would prefer the final stay like this, where it's, where you know where it is?
Unless it's Portland and the number 1 seed.
Well, we can't have that exception. Who would rather wait till the last minute and then?
Nope.
It does give the Shield winners some advantage because they don't get anything for winning the Shield.
Yeah.
So
So
it's kind of.
they got to pick whether they practiced early or late yesterday.
Oh.
Could be a factor in a city like this, training at
Yeah.
10 as opposed to 2:30.
But, I mean, they don't get anything.
And they get the home lock. All right, who here thinks the Courage are going to win today?
Wow.
All the
I
Dash
just want a
players.
good game.
Guess we don't have to do
Step
that.
up. The former Dash player will be on the winning team.
Nice.
You're the one who mentioned that NWSL records, Western New York stayed in Western New York, so therefore this will be their first championship, regardless of the same coaches and the same players?
According to the league, yes, they made that very clear, but I respectfully disagree with that.
I'm the person who a few weeks ago was talking to, and people attacked me all day the next
Oh,
day. and I
people
was-
attack me all the time. So.
I'm still kind of a bitter Western New York fan of the fact that they really dropped, like was hot and like moved off. So that's fine. That's where I was going.
And I'm not
People
sure
were-
what the thought process was. I mean, for me and Dan, I've talked about this. For me, it's very similar to when they moved the San Jose Earthquakes to Houston to become the Houston Dynamo. MLS made the conscious decision to leave San Jose's history in San Jose because their reasoning at the time, and I agree with this reasoning, they wanted to get soccer to return to San Jose at some point. So when eventually they got the Earthquakes back, the Earthquakes kept that history. I don't know if that thought went into this, but I've seen that it's like we've seen other leagues, other sports where it's like a team is franchised, when a franchise is moving, do they keep their stats or not? And in this case, those leagues said
But
no.
if you talk to the players and the coaches, they all feel like it's the same team, and even the Portland
And then-
side feels like.
I mean, just like the Dynamo was all but 3 people with the Earthquakes before.
The president has said, so they'll do that for Kansas City if,
Yeah.
or is that just the thing that they will do it on a case by case?
I mean, usually it's case by case. I mean, if you look at baseball, the Braves have been in 3 cities over 140 years, and they're all considered one. But it's just the way they do. But I mean, I don't see an argument that linearly speaking that it's the same team. Like Portland people, do you view
Same
it as
team.
the team that you're playing
Same
against?
team.
Well, there's another team in Portland that has been in various iterations and has the same, claims to have the same record. Same thing happens in Seattle, Vancouver.
This is true. And San Jose, ironically enough. And I get it, you're paying as a Flash fan, but I still think it's a,
And I would just clarify that the league has said that.
Yeah, I
So
think
it's-
from what
it's the same team.
What
Like,
I've been
people
told,
are- that's why.
it was the Courage's decision to start fresh. Which again, I understand, if you don't want to pound your chest over this game, 2016, you didn't even know you
Then they could have
were
got it.
If the Courage say they're the same team, people give them crap. If the Courage say they're a different team, people
But it's the
Oh, of
league's
course.
decision about.
I just mean like social media wise.
No talk of back-to-back.
No, but league will not acknowledge that it's back-to-back.
The players went back to back.
The players
Yeah.
are back-to-back.
The
And
coach
and
went
if you're
back-to-back.
Dwayne DiRosario and you won 4 out of 7 MLS Cups, you should feel like.
Dan, I got it.
Hold on 1 second.
So if you look at our logo yesterday at the conferences, Portland's the only one that has a star on their logo.
Right.
So if they, and like you say, if the league's not allowing it, that's why.
But that's also not consistent either, because I haven't seen Kansas City always use their 2-star. So, but that is a good thing to look at.
And then you have like Sky Blue wears the star for
Wait,
W.
what?
Sky,
they thought the star was tacky.
But now sometimes they have it with 2 and sometimes they
Well,
don't have
no,
it at
now
all.
they changed their mind, and now they have 2.
Sky Blue wears their star from WPS,
Right.
but they also never acknowledge their WPS history in their press releases, unlike the Breakers and the Red Stars, who are all about like hundreds of yards in the Breaker, and they've both been in 3 different leagues. Do you have something?
A question to you about the final side, the mechanisms of getting it back someday to get the highest seed. When MLS went to the highest seed, they benefited in part, almost by accident, by the FIFA break that falls in mid to late November. So there would be times when, without even anybody trying, there were 2 weeks between the conference finals and the finals. Would that make a difference, do you think, in the NWSL if they went to 2 weeks or was it just all of that?
Well, what does everybody think? Would 2 weeks make a difference over 1 week?
You gotta buy a month in advance.
Yeah,
2 weeks would.
would have been.
It depends if it's in a market like Orlando that's got 1 billion flights to it, or if it's in a market like North Carolina that there's no flights there.
And Jonathan, really one of the biggest issues, and the reason MLS wasn't able to do this till what, 15?
Because they couldn't sell enough tickets.
No, that's not.
First one, right?
Yeah, but that everybody had a venue that they controlled.
Yeah.
Right.
Where they could set aside that weekend. They couldn't do the highest seed thing until MLS got to the
Right,
point
that's right.
where everybody could claim that.
Boston and Sky Blue will share colleges, so they have to worry about their schedules.
Right.
Yeah, and they both, Boston usually doesn't play a lot of September games, and Sky Blue goes to Sunday. And maybe they'd go to bigger venues, but I don't think that would not reflect well either, because what does it say if you're
Yeah. And as we
hosting the
saw,
final and can't even use
Seattle
your own
getting pushed
venue?
out of its regular venue when they had the final. Yeah. WoSoCo shirt, she's going to come down the aisle and take the sheets after each round. Okay, so make sure your team name is on the sheet, otherwise you won't get credit for it. All right. Most of these have a letter answer. Please just, I think I just have you just circle the letter. You know, should be pretty easy. You're not bringing the sheet to the front. Lindsay will pick it up. No smartphones. No asking Dan. No asking me. No asking Jonathan to look it up on his phone. What?
I'm turning the phone off.
Yeah, and media are not, Jonathan can play, but he's not eligible to win any of the prizes anyway, so. All right.
What about his
There's
team?
What about my team?
All right. All right, we got 6 rounds. After each round, Link's gonna pick up the sheets, but after the sheets are picked up, I will show you the answers so you don't have to wait forever to know if you were right or wrong, all right? Please don't yell out the answers. Okay. Whisper amongst yourselves. All right, so first round, NWSL playoffs, everybody's ready, got a pen, got their brains working, kind of, smartphones off. Which team is the only number 4 seed to win the NWSL Championship game? You have to make the Jeopardy sounds or something.
Not my forte.
I'll give you guys maybe 20 seconds per, I don't know.
You just told us the answer.
Yeah, some of the answers to these were in our presentation. Yeah. All right, ready for question number 2? Who was named MVP of the inaugural NWSL final, that being 2013? Don't make me pick out the weekends in the front row.
Go outside, sit outside.
I'm sorry.
You have to be on video in the other room.
All right, you guys ready for question number 3? Who has scored the most NWSL playoff goals all time, combining finals and semifinals?
Yeah, I think so.
And that even includes last weekend.
Oh. That's funny. So, wait, what's that?
Oh, no, I know.
Because it's semi.
Thanks, Jen.
Change my answer.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I don't remember.
All right, ready for question number 4?
Yeah.
Which player has earned the most NWSL postseason shutouts?
Ooh. We can't. Okay, let's make.
Like I don't remember the answers to that team, but I do.
We can't hear them over our own wheels.
Yeah, I was gonna say like seriously, you guys are getting.
You guys are right.
Yeah. All right, ready for question number 5. Which 3 Western New York Flash players converted their penalty kicks last year.
Tricky.
I never missed
Trying to torture.
I never missed it. Okay. Sorry. Just getting out of the way.
You can remember from one half
You know, elimination.
All right, we ready to move on? Give up? We know it or we give up? All right, last question in this round. Who scored the first ever NWSL extra time playoff goal?
What's Master define extra time? Just to be sure.
Extra time is not regulation, and it's not stoppage injury time.
Not stop.
It's the two 15-minute periods that are played after a team is tied in regulation.
All right, done.
All right. All right, give your sheet to Lindsay.
Oh, that one's harder. No, we had to go number 5, right? He just said the answer was.
Alright, 10 seconds.
Go back to what it was.
Which one did you need? 6. All right, do we have all the sheets? Last chance, Adrian, have a sheet? Does Glenn have a sheet? Danielle has a sheet? All right, okay. What's the answer? Who's the MVP 2013?
Tobin.
Okay. Living Heat.
No idea.
Amy Rodriguez. And here's one of them not from the final, since we've already seen some of those.
And FCKC with a little bit of a break there, but we can see this exact organization the other track. Rodriguez. She wanted to go keep
Yeah, because no one else has more than 3 at this point. Who has the most shutouts postseason? Barney. No one else has more than 1. B.
The one that didn't have news.
Dahlkemper, Hinkle, Williams. Lewis's was saved. McDonald's went over. Schneider.
It was a field goal.
Who scored the first extra time?
Crystal.
Williams.
Alan Long. Kansas City, Portland semifinal, the very first playoff game ever played. Kansas City's up 2-0. Portland comes back to tie it 2-2. They go to overtime. And here's Alan Long's goal.
Everyone changed to get this one.
Look at this.
You can always tell when you're on time.
semis next year, but you know the long series is not off in this game.
Now we got to remind people this game isn't over yet.
Go pull that
We're
one.
playing this entire overtime, but Allen pushing up offensively. And as for another second quarter, that was something she was going to do once the game on the
She's camera ready.
Yeah, she's not camera ready anymore.
All right, ready for the next round?
We didn't do that.
Okay, make sure your team name is on the top. This round you actually have to write a name. If you only get last name or nickname, that's fine. Okay, so we've got showing you 12 players. Each player shown has earned at least 100 caps for the U.S. Women's National Team. All right, so you get to name the player. And I start you with the easy ones, and then it gets really hard. So, first name or last name or nickname, as long as it's really clear. Obviously, there's some first name you can't use because it would be multiple.
So they're gonna be.
All right, Jonathan, you got this one?
I like the pictures.
Hey, we're big. Don't be Mary Moore.
Yeah, which they were using.
I know. Both.
You can check.
Yeah.
Who knows what will change?
Misspellings accepted to a certain point.
How many correct letters do we have?
Great. Take a look at that. It's just a creepy tough here.
I mostly pick pictures with the kids that I really like.
Right, no, that's a nice.
I would take that back.
That's the last game.
Oh, you got that.
I say that being.
See, I'm willing you.
You can go with it.
Yes.
Yeah, try to spell her name.
You should know. And notice on this kit where the star is.
Yes.
This is a 1-star, Aaron. Notice where the star is. Waved on the sleeve. This is before you had the national team stars on the All right, ready for number 4?
Yes.
Someone was doing harassing
That was funny.
I regret not doing that one.
All right, number 5. You ready for number 5?
Oh, yeah.
You said that way too loud.
I was gonna ask the questions and then give it away.
And this is that era where they were adding gold trim to everything, and they even had an all gold jersey, which.
Where?
And then we didn't win any gold badge in their gold jersey.
And then the first made names in 2011.
All right, ready for number 6? This is my favorite U.S. national team jersey. It was never made available for retail.
I'm sure if you get some piping at there.
It was only offered they only wore it 2009, 2010. The U.S.'s only snow game.
Women's.
Spell their name.
Speaking of grass angels, they did snow angels.
Nah, they'll know.
All right, we got it. Ready for number 7? That's a good picture. She usually look like this. Oh, like right
I like the background picture of the Canadian flag.
Oh, that's a Norwegian.
Sorry.
That is a good picture in the background, though. Yeah. There's that one Christine Love picture where like she just scored and she's celebrating, and the keeper is like doing the Sambu. What just happened?
Can she like show us them again?
All right, get into the tough ones. Not that one. Well, it depends. It depends.
She just tweeted.
Wait, that's the same number as that other girl. What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Love that kid. I like it when they're not white, so.
I like the socks.
Yeah, gold.
Yeah.
No, that's nice.
And even the triple.
I like the arm. What are you doing with your life?
All right, ready for number 9. Waldo.
I really like this.
Philly area, I know.
Except I feel like any jersey where you have to leave a square for the number,
Yeah.
it's just problematic because then if you don't buy a number, it looks
weird.
Yeah.
Or you just buy the fake knockoffs in downtown LA for like $8. They'll put that
But I
kind
know people that refuse to put a number on it because they're like,
Yeah.
no, I don't
Because when you walk up to a player, you're like, you're my favorite player, because you don't have a number.
Orange.
Well, they
All right, ready for number 10? I also like how they used to make the kids so that they were interchangeable between them wearing tops and shorts. Which you can't really do with the current kids. They're not meant for that.
Well, I like how even on the older ones, the big ones that still do commentary, so it gives the younger kids to dance them on their names.
Would you say that your kids are clean?
Yeah. That was just Alex did it.
That's probably the branding from that.
Hey, Jen, did they get bonus points and be the name that was on their jersey as well as their married name?
Yeah.
Yes.
We get bonus points for making
We'll use that for a tiebreaker if needed.
This is on you guys.
All right, number 11.
Yeah, I know where they play college. You can just write that.
See, there you've got the 2 stars, but still on the sleeve.
I think that's a better idea, because if you get too many, where do you?
When, not if. When you
Circle.
Is there any limit on the size of the crest for FIFA, or can you just do it really big in the middle, surrounded by stars?
Well, but you have to have a number on the front of the jersey.
Put the number in the middle.
I don't know. We'll have to look at the equipment rules. All right, last one.
Like old jersey again.
That's it. Kind of a tradition.
Wait, what was this list for?
Gold is not a
Was it the 100 caps? 100 caps.
Yeah, it's like, it's fine as a highlight color, but, yeah. And the color doesn't look good on anybody. All right, do I need to run through them one more time real quick?
Yes.
Keep going. We're gonna go through all of them. All right. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3.
There you go. Watch.
4.
Apparently, it's an epiphany.
5. Number 6. 7. I do like that Norwegian reaction.
She's like, whoa.
Yeah. Number 8. 9. 10.
That's good.
11. And 12. All right, so give your sheet to Lindsay. Let's get those in.
Set that on fire.
Ooh, we'll get more multiple choice.
No, I can't put like
Wait, don't go. You don't answer.
Yes. We need your one email.
Yeah. She needs a hard one.
Yours would like to do too. So it's like
I'm pretty sure by myself I would have failed.
Any more sheets that we're ready? All right. Wagner.
Put L2 in.
Ham.
You should be no color.
does have brown hair.
Cat Whitehill.
And Rennick, sorry.
Reddick's one too. Alex Morgan in her very first cap. She got to wear number 21 for her first
It looks
cap.
like she's like 7 years older.
Yeah. Cindy Parlow,
Yep.
coach of the
CPC.
Thorns for the 2013 NWSL Championship winning team. Had a lot of great header goals, obviously. Heather O'Reilly. Heather Mitz. Kate Sobrero Markgraf.
I put 2 F's.
Shannon McMillan, who got this?
University of Portland.
University of Portland, yeah.
I was like, I know her college.
San Diego Spirit.
Cannot think about it.
And did anybody get Lindsay Tarpley?
This is the brain trust.
Okay, so Tarpley scored the sudden death golden goal in the U19 Women's
back when
World
they
Cup
had
final.
those.
It was the first youth Women's World Cup. It was U.S. versus Canada in Canada in front of 54,000 people, and I still have this video. I love it that the announcer was going, "The skipper has won it! The skipper has won it!" And because she was capping the team, and Erin McLeod was in goal for Canada with an amazing red and white
That
mohawk.
red Oh, that was
mohawk.
rad.
Yeah.
Oh
So I have put that video up on YouTube if you ever want to watch it. And so like Heather O'Reilly's on that team, Lori Kolupny, Rachel Bueller.
What's the title of that video?
Just go to the channel WoSo Nostalgia. All right, got your sheet for round 3. Make sure your team names on the top. This is the NWSL streaks and records. 6 questions. All right, question number 1. Which player holds the NWSL streak for most consecutive regular season minutes played? And this is a current streak.
Oh. That's a good one. Oh, you did a good
Jen, are
one.
these through the semis, or is this just through the regular season?
Regular season, regular season.
Yeah, I was thinking. And it's always like somebody.
Why would you play anybody else?
All right, question number 2. Who scored the fastest ever goal in NWSL history? And you get an extra point if you name who she scored it against.
I don't know who it was, but I think that
I'm not positive about
she's on her phone.
Yeah, she's serious. All right, question number 3. No. Who scored the first ever NWSL penalty kick goal?
Wow.
Stories are getting really mean.
In like regular game or like
Yeah,
it's regular
like the place ever. Yeah, because a shootout wouldn't count as a goal anyway, but that's very crucial.
Why not?
One of those two.
I don't think we've gotten to one right yet.
Yeah.
All right, ready for question 4? No. Which team holds the regular season record for consecutive minutes without allowing a goal? Again, regular season. Regular season.
I think so. This one might not go well. You're killing
That's
us.
why
You're killing us.
use different topics.
Hey, thanks for tossing us a ball.
Next one is capitals. European capitals.
Oh, like I'm a 4th grade teacher. I'm all over that.
All right, right, question number 5. Which player was the first to score a hat trick for 2 different NWSL clubs?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that person played like 2. That person played for like 12.
Yes. Yeah, because I remember watching the second time. And they talked about it over and over. No, you can change it, I don't care.
No, I mean, I'm going by it.
All right, last question for this round. Who has played the most NWSL regular season games all time? Not counting WPS.
Oh, that's a good question.
Just NWSL regular season games.
It's like 3 of them. One of them's gonna win by 1 game.
What's funny is that she does regular season, but I think someone would like have 2,000 because it's getting an injection.
Appearances straight up?
What?
Appearances regardless of time?
Okay.
Correct.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Games played, not minutes or games started.
Yeah.
All right, when you're ready, Lindsay will take your sheet. Does anybody need to see one of the other questions again?
We've already picked the wrong one.
Someone copy our answers, so.
So consecutive shutout minutes. Hat tricks for 2 different clubs.
Okay. Always with these dash
answers. What's the next one? Oh, just
All right,
say, like they had themes on
Oh, what'd you do? Wait, what? Okay, what's number 5 again?
D.
All right, do we have all the sheets?
No, she still has hers.
Oh man, that's real bad.
See, what we needed to do was get like 1 Dash fan, 1 Chicago fan, 1.
Good about Dash.
That is true.
Yeah.
All right, what's the answer?
Which team you have the longest streak of
Barney.
She's getting close.
Doll Kemper.
Doll Kemper.
That was my second guess.
And she has only missed, what, 7 minutes of her entire
She
career?
started every game, where she makes it
Right.
55 years.
Right, but even, like, if she had missed those 7 minutes, it'd be even better, yeah.
I can look that up though while you do the next question.
Skyler. Rodriguez.
Kel Rodriguez against
Boston?
Portland.
I remembered it was Skyler.
And the lead did a great video of comparing. So Erica Timrak previously had the fastest goal, and they're so close that they do them together and they time him to see who goes. Oh, I've seen that. It's really cool.
That was in Providence Park that week. Yeah, I remember that. I had been there.
Why don't we still wait? Everybody has a fast goal.
I'm sure they had to time that.
Poor Eric.
Yeah.
Doll Kemper played 87 minutes in her debut, then 78, so that's 15 total minutes missed, and 90 minutes every game since then.
Wow. And now I have broadcast sending me trivia questions to answer, but. Anyone? Sinclair. In the very first match, in the Kansas City-Portland match in Kansas City, April 2013. So,
I feel like Nadine was the red herring.
Last April, May. 485 standings. They set that last spring. All right. It's like 485. But it was across what was that, 5 games last April, May. Which player was the first to score a hat trick for 2 different clubs? Not Ada Dean. This one's really hard because the names I put were the top 4.
Barner or not Barnes? Taylor. Taylor missed a few games. Taylor missed a few games. For this one game at the end, it's like she was leading almost the whole season, and then yeah.
Didn't she just cross 100 this year?
Yeah, they all crossed 100 this year. Yeah, they're all really close together. All right. Next sheet. Make sure your team names are different.
Yeah, this
But they don't count as one of our slots.
No. International meaning they're not for countries. All right. Team name on the top of the sheet. Who was the first Brazilian to score at NWSL?
It's not. It's not that one.
It was one of those Brazilian girls. Yeah, that's
It's rearranged for me,
You Dash people should know this. You were just saying you don't
There are
have
2. All right, next one. Which international player has scored the most NWSL career goals?
Oh, wait a minute.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe the most.
All right.
Yeah, clarifying question, is that career goals in the NWSL?
The most NWSL career goals. So not their international goals, not playing in
If
any
it was
other
international, that would be a really easy answer.
Yeah, all of these are related to an NWSL record or restriction. Yeah.
Right. Oh, well, that's like
All right, so we've had 4 NWSL championships, 4 NWSL championship MVPs, not the season MVP, the championship game MVP. Only one of them was not an American. Who was it?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like You're right, there's no gas station on here.
No, the previous one. Brazilian.
Well, they do have Brazilian.
All the prizes are cash
you in
prizes.
2. Yeah, okay. I think you in 2.
All right. Which Canadian player who has played in the NWSL has not played in an NWSL final?
I know. That's so wrong.
I was stretching for international.
Come on, find out.
That one hurts.
Who's choosing?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Oh, first.
Who was the first international player to score an NWSL goal?
Okay, just checking.
This is
I would guess that, but I totally didn't.
I feel like one of them is
But sometimes
I know I'm
tricky.
All right, last question for this round.
Nick, this one's all you.
WoSoCo was born in which European country?
I should have asked him when I started. I think I know this.
This is where I was getting really desperate for internationally themed questions that weren't really obvious. So.
Really?
Well, because I didn't know. I had been using it. Not everyone's gonna know this one.
I know. I'm like,
Okay. We basically.
Looking back, I'll show 4, 5, and 6 again. Do we need any other ones?
All of them.
All of them? Okay. Okay.
We're bad at these. We're not bad. We're just like.
All right. First Brazilian to score.
Oh, wait.
Oh, no, reading it. Just reviewing the question.
Hold up now.
Slow down.
we're good, right?
Most career goals, NWSL career
Let's do it.
goals.
Who's wrong is
But we had a lot of fun
You
getting
can't
there.
get any wrong.
Oh, good God.
Fire hotel, when it's like Angela Buck and Heather Mitchell doing it.
Yeah, they're doing some sort of thing.
But it says, like, on the other side, this is like a soccer ball pit, face paint.
All right, all sheets in. All sheets in.
You could do that with
Last chance. Last. You got okay. So round 5. Make sure you have your name. Oh, wait, we didn't go sorry. Round 4 answers. All right. So first Brazilian to score.
Juliana.
I remember this goal.
Yes. Yes. She scored again on her own goal.
I remember this
She had to goal. That's what happened.
That's why I was looking at you guys. I was like,
And notice a good call by the referee saying play on. When she got the foul, she still had the ball. Yeah. So play on. She has possession.
She scored 3 goals.
Don't give it away. She's gonna
2 goals, right?
Can you replay that one more time?
An own goal?
Yeah.
I remember that night I was saying
Sanford.
Yay!
See, it confuses you.
it was like a single season.
All right. 42. She's the all-time goal-scoring leader for NWSL. 32.
Oh.
yeah, Sam scored a lot this year.
Yeah.
Well, she had an okay season.
All right. The non-American MVP is Serena D'Angelo.
We were paying attention when you guys were talking.
Yeah.
Well, then we were actually.
Oh, there it is.
Harsh,
McLeod.
That was not cool, not cool.
Here's your second one positive, one negative.
And Karina LeBlanc played for the Thorns in 2013,
Yep.
Shalina Zadorsky and Diana Matheson for the Spirit last year.
Sorry, Aaron's doing alright.
Renee Cuellar. First ever. It was the first ever NWSL goal, period.
Who in the heck is
Kansas City. Mexico.
Okay. Of course it's the one on the
Just like the weird.
WoSo, born in Macedonia. Or whether the city he was born in is now in Macedonia.
Nice country, it's really nice.
All right.
Who's got the most?
So, round 5, got your name on, make sure your team name's on the sheet. Another 6 questions. You're looking for who has the most of whatever I'm asking. So, who's earned the most yellow cards?
Oh god, that's so close.
Wow, I can't count that much.
You throw a dart.
I would do one of those, but that's totally again.
You know what? She got a lot. All right, number two. Which club has scored the most regular season goals?
Houston Dash.
I'm not allowed the most in the other team. Oh wait.
Yeah, we all know that. Yeah, but it might be a question.
Let me tell you. If you make fun of yourself,
It's like don't be mean. Don't be mean. All right, number three.
Nobody gets those two, but.
Wait, what was it?
Which playoff team this year's there's 4 teams playoffs? Which one of them, if you add their U.S. national team players' caps together, who's got the most?
Is that international?
Oh, that's
International. U.S.
U.S.
Okay, I didn't know.
U.S. gotta be.
We're just looking for their U.S. caps combined, not any other.
No, wait.
Because they have caps of people.
Yeah. Players, each player counts once, or each time they play counts total?
Each time they play, it's not the number of players. It's the number of players in the roster, how many caps they've earned for the U.S. national team added together. So if Houston was up there, you would add Carly Lloyd and Jane Campbell. And so you'd get 200 and Carly plus 1, basically. Yeah. All right, does that make sense? So it's who has the most combined international caps, which all of these would be in the 200. Just their playoff roster. Just their playoff roster. Their current roster.
All of them are playoff teams.
Yeah, I'm only showing the playoff teams.
FCKC in 2015 had more than Sky Blue with Christie's.
And now like Chicago caps starting to get seems like it's this choice of like, let's see how many.
No, that's not that. Ashes at 10. Creepers are well known.
All right, next question. We'll come back.
I could be wrong.
We're all NWSL clubs.
For all NWSL clubs, yeah. We're only looking at NWSL wins for an NWSL coach, but of course some coaches have been at different clubs. So you're looking at the coach's stat, not the club stat.
That's O'Reilly, yeah.
Winningest coach.
Okay, I got no idea.
Yeah, but they won a lot of games.
If you coach longer, but you've had a terrible season, you lose out on all the prizes. At one time,
3 games.
I'm fine, yeah. Even though I want to do but they won, yeah. It's fine. It's nice. She said they were all
Well, Sharon gave us Carly.
I got the soccer ball.
Oh, that's cool.
I met with them, but I had to ask them. I can't read the name.
Pat Summit, one of the things that she did, the basketball coach, was she always signed her name so people could read it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I respect that. If I were ever famous, I would do that too. That's right, 5 letters.
All right, which NWSL club has won the most away games in the regular season? So in their whole NWSL history, how many NWSL away games in the regular season? So who is best on the road?
I think it's gonna totally can.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, this is great.
Because they've all won a lot of games.
And I was surprised you were not sending it to me because I was super okay.
I mean, this is really. That was my first. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it's any of these.
All right, last question in this round. And by played, I mean that the most number of keepers have appeared in a game for that club.
That's over the whole history of the league. Can we name, if I can name all the keepers from all those teams, to be incredible. But then I should be able to add them up, right? That's gonna take a while.
That would be like a lightning round tiebreaker. Yeah. Not any one particular season, but their combined keeper history.
Yeah.
I can count at least 4.
That's what I can count for a lot. It's 4, yeah, because they played 3 this year.
Actually, you're right, it might be more.
Yeah. Because it's like when they take the games off or they went to international duties.
I was just
I actually can't name all the keepers.
Especially since we have the corrections.
Jen? Don't worry about it.
These are tough,
Well, if they were easy, everyone would get them all right. Then we wouldn't get a prize. Because she knew all the results. No, I give really easy tests. And I send them home to their parents, I'm like, this is why your kid's failing. Choose the one that says blue, red. That's a
Alright, do I need to go back to any questions?
Where's wrong? This one's right. And I was wearing my the guy was wearing that was wearing
Evil final round. We need to see the cap one around. Cap one around. Yeah. Alright, give your sheets to Lindsay. Alright. Any other questions need to be seen? One.
Oh, these are hard.
Most yellow cards.
What was 5 again?
I'll go back to 5 in a second. So we've got 1, 5, and then
We need 3 again. Can we look at 3 again?
oh, 3.
Those are hard. I'm not gonna know any of those with terrible faces.
This one won't count. This one should count. All right, everybody has your sheets to Lindsay? Sheets in to Lindsay? Okay. The last round that says evil round, it's a fun round and it won't count towards the score. It's just amusing while we get the grading done. And Jordan Angeli should be right for it.
Okay. I have
All right.
everybody's script.
Cheater, pumpkin.
Now I have everybody.
All right.
We're set.
All right. And Lindsay, you can do totals then because that's the last grading round. Okay. All right.
For the math. All of them.
Matthias.
Just fish laws.
Wow.
Her mama thinks she's so innocent.
But she's also played all 5 seasons. She's played all 5 seasons too. She's just one ahead of Alyssa Moss.
Alyssa Moss?
But she's got more of a perception than she gets.
Alyssa Moss seems
Wow.
That's what it is.
Rosie White set a record this year for quickest accumulation and two accumulation suspensions in one season.
Yeah.
As a forward. All right. Which club has scored the most regular season goals? Seattle. Those 2 seasons, 2014, 2015. All right, this is not who has the most national team players, but whose national team players combined have the most caps?
I don't think it's Portland.
It's Portland.
Have a lot.
What's the actual answer? It's 288 for the Thorns.
How many did the Pride have?
I didn't
Actually,
even,
has like.
They were like,
Alan's what was your guess?
Right. All four playoff teams were over 200 combined, but Portland was a good 15 and 0.
15 black.
Riley.
Laura.
Oh,
Only coach who over 50 wins.
Oh, that's right, they did that big thing with the thing and the thing. On the internet.
On the interwebs. Yes, they reached 100, right?
No, she did,
50
she did the most.
50
wins.
100
50 wins at the most.
All right, what's the guess for this?
Seattle.
Yeah.
I didn't know the answer to this, so I thought of the question, I looked it up, and I was really surprised, like, hey, interesting.
I mean, they had that run this year when they
Yeah, this one's kind of a giveaway since I put them in the answer. They have had regular season appearances from 10 different keepers in 4 seasons.
Oh, that's
Yeah. And they had Didi Hadachich come in for one game, and people kept tearing their ACLs. And all right, so while they're finishing the scoring,
Wow.
this is completely voluntary, will not be graded, but this is just to distract you while they finish the scoring.
I'm gonna like 6
I do know something. And Jordan's going to tell us all the answers at the end. This is the 2010 jersey unveiling for WPS. Notice there are LA jerseys. This is about 3 weeks before the team shut down. Right? So there are 2 players from each of the 9 teams.
Okay, number 1.
Wait, wouldn't this be number 1 on the right?
Yeah.
Number 1 would be on the right. Number 1 starts on this side, right?
Yeah, no,
So back row, 1 to 9, front row, 1 to 9.
Oh, I knew that one. You guys already got that one. None of them are looking at the camera. It's very distracting. Yeah, it's the only one I know. Oh.
God, look at that makeup.
Oh, I knew that one.
You can't really see it.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Oh, it is. Kind of like your short, like little.
Alright, let's see if there's
Oh, look at the computer. Remember when we used to have a good LA summer?
Because that was in Philadelphia. And I have no idea at all.
But look at
I'm pretty impressed with how many we got.
That's what we were talking about.
Well, get out of there.
I can't see them. That's
Alright,
great.
they're almost done with the grading. While they're finishing the grading, I'll do the raffle real quick, which I guess it is a raffle because you didn't have to pay for it, but I have some prizes. I want you guys to leave with really positive, fun memories of winning things, so you should have gotten a ticket when you came. So we have, straight from the press box, a Tournament of Nations folder. Hey, it's a prize.
Signed by Sam Kerr?
No, that'd be great. That's January 2010. Okay, last 4 numbers, 3157.
Thank you.
So you. Wow. That was easy. There you go. I'm sorry. All right.
Well, you could get her to sign it at a game one day.
We have
Oh,
Jubilee scarf.
Wow.
And it goes to 3142.
Damn it.
Yes! Thank you. Thank you. All right. I got this the other night at Lions Pride.
Yeah, Lions Pride.
For Club and Country. It's got Orlando on the other side. So awesome to see a bar that sells soccer merch.
Yeah, awesome.
3140. Alright, we have the official book of the Women's World Cup. This isn't the game day program, but it's like a little book beforehand that they put together. No autographs in it. 3153.
Hey.
Yeah.
All right, my favorite book of all time, The Girl's Guide to Soccer Life by the stars of the WSA with a CD. There's videos on this. It's so awesome.
Cool.
And I have two of them. All right, 3143. We're gonna quiz you on this later.
194?
3194. All right, last prize. The dash prize with players that aren't really on the dash anymore.
Okay. I'll trade you.
Sports Illustrated autograph by Carly, Mo, and Clayton. 3189.
There you go. That's for you. That's for you, buddy.
We're just about to start with trophies since I have a winner for tomorrow.
Anything that says Carly.
I got a warehouse of those bobbleheads. Yeah,
That bobblehead doll, I put it next to my dog and she just walked away from it. Alright, there you go.
I just think it looks like
And the results are in.
That's something I think she would like.
Those are the.
You got like the autograph Nicely done.
Thank you, thank you. If only that would work for a Powerball.
There you go. All right, so I'm just going to read the top three. If you want to look at your scores later, we can do that. But in third place, we have Failing Media. With 31 points. Very impressive. All right, second place. Wait. Oh, sorry, with 26 points. Sorry, I read that wrong. 26 points. With 28 points, in second place, we have Storm Delay.
They were listening to the
And in first place, I didn't rig this, with 31 points, Dash On. They only wrote Dash On. Is it Dash? So it's Dash On for Edgar? No, there's no other Dash team.
Oh, well, the full team name was Dash On for
Okay,
Edgar.
Dash On for Edgar.
All right.
Okay. So they get a free copy of my almanac, and they get to split amongst themselves. We have some WPS player cards.
Player cards?
Yeah, we have Leslie Osborne, Jill Lloyden, Marta, Abby, A-Rod, I couldn't afford the Jordan Angeli card. It was like $5 more than all the other ones. It was. Karen Bardsley, sky blue.
Wow.
They have one for Kling, but she's wearing her North Carolina uniform. Sinclair, Kelly Smith for the Breakers. So you guys can use those however you would like.
The dash while we win something.
Alright, so we're gonna have Jordan Angeli, former WPS and NWSL player.
Which one is she in there? I know
She's not in here, but she'll identify all of them for us. Yeah. She's gonna talk for a few minutes about transitioning from being a player to a broadcaster, and then we'll do a little Q&A. I do want to get out of here by 12:30, and we will sit Jordan down so that if you guys want to get autographs, we can do that. So, Jordan's first responsibility is going to be to ID the players up here.
Okay. So, hi everybody. Hi. Yeah, we'll go. I'm gonna say Kat Whitehill, Elle Averbush, Ella Masser, Manya Mikowski, Leanne Robinson, Leslie Osborne, Tiff Milbritt, Kendall Fletcher, Amy Rodriguez.
That's okay.
Nikki Marshall, Colorado Girl, Brittany Taylor, Whitney Engen, Casey Nagera, now Lloyd, Tobin Heath, Lauren Holiday Cheney, Kelly O'Hara, Ange Wozniak, or Kerr, and Steiger.
So let's be quiet. Let's be quiet for Jordan.
Well, first, thanks Jen for having me. I'm excited to talk to all you guys and kind of be a part of this crew now, like a little bit of the media crew, right? So I have a very unique path, I think, in women's soccer and kind of how I got to where I am today. And I'm really excited I get to stay in the game in some way. And so when I was growing up, of course, like everything I wanted to do, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. I wanted to play on the national team. I wanted to play in big games like this. That's all I ever dreamed of. And you know, a big part of that was the '99 World Cup and being 13 years old and watching that game and saying, that's going to be me. Like that, I want that to be me when I grow up. So fortunately for me, I got to live that dream. It didn't come easy. I tore my ACL within 2 years of, within 1 year I tore it twice in college. And so you can imagine I watched a lot of games that season and started analyzing how my teammates were doing, how I could help my teammates. I was a captain on the team and felt like, okay, there are still ways that I can help the team even though I'm not out there playing. So I think a little bit of that broadcaster mind started to creep in, right? And then got through my 6th year of collegiate soccer and got drafted 16th overall in the same draft with these players to the Boston Breakers. And fortunate for me, you can see I had Leslie Osborne and Lauren Cheney on my Boston Breakers team. And I ended up scoring a lot of goals because she was very heavily marked, and so was Kelly Smith. And I was just like, I'll kick this in the back of the goal. So I had a great year. Allie Riley beat me out by this much for Rookie of the Year. But to be amongst those players was just amazing, and I got called in the national team and was living my dream. And then my first game of my 2nd season, I tore my ACL again. So after that, immediately I knew what I did, and I had 3 years. It took me 3 years to get back. The league folded. They didn't know what was next. I didn't know what was next, so I just rehabbed with the thought of like, I'm gonna be a full human again and like just get as healthy as I can. Got drafted into NWSL, didn't even know my name got in the draft, and somehow I got a call the day of that first, I don't even remember what it was called, when they drafted all the older supplemental draft. Got a call from a guy named Michael Jordan. I was like, are you pranking me? Yeah, and he had drafted me to the team. I was not playing soccer yet. I actually remember after I got drafted, I trained with my youth team coach, and we did a one-on-one session, and he was like, wow, you think you're gonna play pro soccer? And I was like, I'm thinking maybe, but by the way you said that, I don't know. So I made it back, and I sat on the bench a lot, so I watched a lot more soccer again. And I started to realize, even in that time that I was away, those 3 years I was away, that soccer wasn't gonna last forever for me. Like, it was very hard for me to stay healthy and play the way that I liked to play. And I knew that eventually everybody's career is gonna end. Mine might just come a little bit sooner. So in those 3 years away, I started broadcasting and just asking. I started on a 3-person team with high school soccer in Colorado. And that was an interesting thing to do. But these 2 people I worked with were so honest and open and helped me out. And so I went from there, and then I called CU and DU, and I was like, you guys have a webcast next year, right? Can I be on your webcast? So I got doing that, and then one thing led to another. And after I retired a couple years into NWSL, I just hit the floor running, and I had already started my broadcasting career. I went and lived in Alabama for a little bit and helped out with their team and creating content for them. And then it was kind of one thing after another, SEC Network, Pac-12, and then this year getting to do all these NWSL games. I've done games with the Colorado Rapids on TV. Just building this career and this passion, and I clearly like talking to people and being in front of people, and I'm opinionated and feel like I see the game well because I had to, right? I had to help my team in any way I could, whether it be I was injured or on the bench because I wasn't playing. Like, there's still work to be done, and I felt like I just started to see the game a little differently. And now I feel really privileged that I get to. Yesterday I got to go talk to all my friends and ask them about what it was like to play in this game today and have fun with them and help them realize, like, yeah, it's a big game, but like, I think people want to connect with you as a person. So we did some fun stuff yesterday, and it's just been a great transition for me, and I hope something that just continues to grow, right? I think that's one of the greatest things I found about being in this field is I loved soccer because you can start to see the instant gratification. You work hard at something, and then the next day you can go to the game and implement it, and you get better. And I feel the same thing with broadcasting. I'm like, oh, I just said excellent a lot on that broadcast. Can I change that and be better tomorrow? So there's so much room to grow, but I have really enjoyed what I'm doing and being a part of this and getting to be on a different side of the game, but still within something that I love so much and so passionate about. So it's a little bit about my journey to where I am now.
Well, one thing that I'd like you to explain to them, and you and I had this conversation in April when I had you on the podcast, you talked about transitioning from being an analyst to play-by-play.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of viewers don't necessarily understand the difference, and you had told me about the signs you were putting in front of yourself in the booth to remind you that your role was different. So explain analyst to play-by-play.
So a lot of former players go into this analyst role, right? So you're describing why something is happening. Why Allie Long on that ball decided to play with the outside of her foot to spring somebody in on the far side, right? It needed to bend this way with her right foot to get to that person there. So I'm explaining that as an analyst. So this year, one of the things when Lifetime came up as one of as partnering with NWSL, I called the lead right away and I was like, you guys know I'm a broadcaster, right? Like, I need to be on these games. And by the end, so that announcement I think was a Friday, or a Thursday, whatever it was, by the end of that night, I had an email from Michael Cohen, who's the head producer, saying like, I want to chat with you. So sometimes you just gotta be aggressive. Not something I shy away from. And so I talked to Michael Cohen, he was like, this analyst role is great for you right now. So you're describing the game, but it's gonna be hard for you in the future because what if Heather O'Reilly wants to be an analyst? What if these players who have a lot of caps and find their way into this analyst role, they're probably gonna get more opportunities than you. Can you figure out a way to stay in the game and become the play-by-play? So kind of before they knew that they had locked Jen in, and Jen does, you guys know Jen does so much she does Lifetime, but she covers all these other games too. He was like, well, maybe play-by-play. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to be a play-by-play. And just working with other play-by-plays, it's a lot of work, man. I kind of prep myself. I wish I would have brought a picture of how I prep myself, but I use like a manila envelope, you know, and I open it up and I have the teams tactically how they lay out on the field. So I'll have everybody from the goalkeeper to the back four, how they lay out in the center of midfield, if they're a 4, if they're a diamond, if they're 3 in the midfield, and then the forwards. And I study like I am the play-by-play because I want to know those details. I want to know that Allie Long went to UCLA and transferred to UNC, and she knows all these players from both these teams because that's why, right? Those are the little nuggets of info that play-by-plays have to know. So play-by-plays are really figuring out a way to tell you the stories that you love to connect with. And it is so hard to choose. You could have these great stories, and I think anybody that's, you know, a writer or does anything, you could sit on these stories. Like I sat on a story about Chioma Ogogogu, why she wears the sleeve. I sat on it all season because there wasn't a moment that came up that I could tell that story of, you know, does anybody wonder why she wears that sleeve? Like, it seems strange, right? She wears it because there's a player in the WNBA who wears the sleeve, and she just likes her hardness and her attitude and the way that she plays, that she's like, I'm gonna do that too, because I look down and I'm like, keep playing like this. Like, so it's an inspiration to her, but I never had the chance to say it because she didn't score a goal in a game that I called as a play-by-play, so that never came up. So you sit on stories like that, and you're really deciding what the audience gets to know and what they don't get to know, and when you're putting in these little nuggets of information. So after my first play-by-play game, and I have a little note card, it says what, like what is happening. That's all I have to do as a play-by-play, tell people what is happening. And then enunciation, or like, I had inflection. So one of the things is like, not, especially as a female, you don't, when you're calling a goal, you don't want to get too high and make everybody think like, oh my gosh, there goes my eardrums. So those are 2 hard things, and especially I had some games at Vista this season when I was calling a game as an analyst, and I'd go, and a half an hour later, I'd call a game as a play-by-play. And I was like, I remember after my first play-by-play, I almost cried because I was like so overwhelmed with the amount of information that I felt like I spewed out, and I didn't even have any control of it. So thanks for bearing with me, everybody.
Any questions for Jordan? I'm sure we have a couple, and then we'll do autographs.
Yeah.
What story do you think we can stop telling?
Can we stop telling? There's something about like a 19-year-old who just signed in the league, like May-ish.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I think we're pretty good with that one.
Yeah, from that the team, we're ready for that one to go away too.
Right?
Other questions about NWSL playing on broadcast?
Yeah.
What do you miss most about not playing soccer?
I miss, you know, it doesn't hit me a lot until I'm there in the moment. Like yesterday after we had the media portion with the Courage, we went down to the field, and that's my old team, right? I played for Western New York Flash. That was the last team I played for. So a lot of those faces are like my teammates. And I get down to the field, and they're just like screwing around before training, laughing and having fun. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what are they laughing about? Like, I wish so bad I could be in that moment and like be in what they're laughing about. I miss that. I miss like pinging a ball from the left side with my left foot, like to a runner going through on the right side. Like little things. Little things. I don't miss doing the beep test or running. Anything like that at all.
So I have a follow-up question. I've often wondered, do professional soccer players, do you play soccer in any capacity, in a rec league, indoor, anything?
I would say I probably would, but I have torn my ACL 3 times, and I've had 7 knee surgeries on my left knee, and I'm like, I just like don't really care for that one step that could change it all. I help out with 2 teams, with the Colorado Rush, and like last week I hopped in with the U15 girls and got to play. And I was pretty awful. I apologize to all of them how bad I was afterwards, but I think just there is so much in that for them to have a strong female be with them on the field and hearing what I'm saying, because one of the biggest things right now with them is like communication and how they lack it on the field. Off the field, they're like, whoa, and then they get on there and it's nothing. And I'm out there and I'm saying, I like don't stop talking, right? So I understand that there's importance in that, in mentoring them in that way and showing them an example, but it's rare that I get out there. The reason I did is because it was indoor on a small field, and I got to play neutral. So.
Any other questions for Jordan?
Where do you think the NWSL broadcasts are gonna go from here?
Where do I think they're gonna go?
Personally, I'm pretty disappointed with rotating commentators and
I think you have a right to feel that way.
They're not on site and really.
I think we all have a little bit of that. Like, to be in a booth with no windows, a TV, I don't have talk back to talk and say like, oh, I want that play again, like help me out with that play. It's a hard situation for us, for the people watching. I think it's difficult, right? Be patient. From the beginning of the season to the end, I believe it did get better. These people are producing a lot of games, and the hopes is, can we get this to a place where, for me, I hope that Lifetime can continue to cover this, but we can continue to cover it in markets as well, right? So like, maybe it is still called there, but there's TV stations in the local markets that are also picking the game up and helping people. I think it's gonna continue to grow. I just think it's hard. It's hard. There's not a lot of money in it, and that comes from that. I think that comes more local than national. It's hard to support a league like this on a national level when I think we need a little bit more push from the local markets. That's my opinion, but MLS didn't get to where it is.
And we did see it was such a late announcement.
Yeah.
As we all know, that we even saw towards the end of the season there were some on-site broadcasts, and it was great. Like I did one trip out to Vista to see how it all worked, and they're like, no, we can do on-site broadcasts. It's more money, more planning, and everything started so late. So I agree that I was very doubtful at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Like I felt like it improved, and I also felt like by the end of the season, the group of broadcasters that were doing it were the ones who had shown that they were regularly watching the league. Some of the ones in the first half of the season, I'm like, I can't listen to this.
And it was hard too, right? Because a lot of it was, I live in Colorado. I had to pay to get down to Florida once a month. And so I was doing my best to do as many games as I could, but it was hard for me financially to do that. Can we figure out a way to get people like Matt Peterson, Mike Watts, me, the people that were on a lot of these broadcasts on a consistent basis, like really tune into those people and help? I think that we are growing in that aspect, and there has been talk. So
and
we're getting there.
Develop more female voices like Chelsea, I can't remember her last name, and Unish Donaldson, who came on towards the end of the season. They had Sherelta Nolan Shane Nolan in for one game. She was awesome, but it's like, but she's a full-time coach with like 3 little kids. Like they just couldn't get her in.
Yeah.
But I like that they are committed to. They're trying to find more female voices.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate doing this again next year, announcing for the NWSL? And what team did you enjoy calling them?
Calling most? I do anticipate it. I'm lucky to be at a part in my career where I feel like it's like I could be with an MLS team a little bit more regularly next year. So if that's the case, I just have to figure out a way that I can still stay on a few NWSL games. But like, of course, my heart's in women's soccer. Like, I'd rather choose that over MLS. But we'll see. Hopefully, I can still stay in it. What team did I like calling the most? I'm getting hints up here. I had a really fun game, actually 2 games where I called a Pride game. And I think one, Mike Watts was play-by-play, and one, I was play-by-play. Yeah, and had so much fun on those games, but it wasn't, I think of like the goals and the moments, the big moments in those games that really stick out to me. So
I think of the '90s night game that you and Matt Pearson did, where you just kept dropping Saved by the Bell references.
That was also fun.
All right, one last question for Jordan. Anyone?
So based on that last comment, you guys didn't drink during the podcast?
All right, we're gonna set up Jordan up here. So
Thank
as
you
you guys,
guys. Thank you.
come out.